and welcome to Chin Hairs and F-Bombs, Conversations with Girlfriends. This is SallyAnn Gray, also known as your gal pal, Sal. Today, I am joined by my lovely friend Miranda, and we are going to talk about fighting. Specifically, we're going to talk about fighting with our significant other and how we survive living with our partners, how we haven't murdered each other, and how that has evolved through our relationship. I'm going to start by introducing myself. If you are new to the podcast, thanks for being here. I'm SallyAnn Gray. I am a Midwestern gal living in Maine. I have been in Maine for almost precisely 11 years now, and I'm here with my mister and my two wild children who just went back to school this week. Praise be. And I am a writer, and apparently I'm a podcaster too. So my friend Miranda, I will let her introduce herself. Hi, Miranda. Thanks for being here.
Hi. Thanks for having me. Oh, gosh. Aren't intros the hardest? I'm like, which parts of me am I today? So I'll start with a Midwesterner too. I think that says a lot about us without saying a lot about us. I currently live and work on the road, and that in and of itself is complicated. There's different terms: digital slow nomad, regular nomad, and I travel the United States with my partner and my dog. I'm in the marketing realm, looking to make a big transition into a different field. So that's been such a lovely thing to look at from all perspectives, including how that adds to stress and anger and fighting. So that's where I'm at.
Thanks. So wait, did you say where you are in the world right now?
I am in Vermont. So northern
Lovely.
Vermont, maybe north central. You know, it's quite funny. I often have to ask myself where I'm at, but it's beautiful and lovely.
I love Vermont. I've only been there once, and I think I was like barely in Vermont. It's lovely, isn't it? Beautiful.
It doesn't seem real often. It's very storybook. Like everything is old and the nature is green and the people are maybe acting. They're so nice. And quirky. Yeah, it's after I've seen most of the United States at this point, and this one, it is one of the most interesting. I love it. It's really cool.
Yeah, on my way to Vermont, I drove through New Hampshire, and even that drive, I was like, you're just showing off nature. It was so pretty.
Yeah, it feels a bit untouched. You don't feel that anymore anywhere. Yeah, it's really sweet. It's quaint. It's cute. I want to hug everything and everybody, including the cows. There's a lot of them.
I learned from one of my kids this week that Vermont is one of the states that has outlawed billboards, right? Have you seen a billboard?
Of course it has. Oh, of course. As someone who's in advertising, I'm like, I knew something felt different. My soul felt open. Wow. Yeah. They also are suing the fossil fuel industry for natural disasters. So it's just like, it does feel a bit like, who are these people? This is delightful.
Okay. So Miranda, you and I met each other in Kansas City. We're both involved in the Kansas City Direct Marketing Association. And I know how fun that group sounds, right? Like, doesn't that sound like, whoa, those people know how to party? But we did. We had a lot of I met so many nice people and lifelong relationships out of that professional group.
Very much. Like that Kansas City group, like anytime I get a promotion or I'm changing a life path, and especially in the career field, it's always like this like squad of people that comes behind me and they're like, yes, you're still one of ours. And it's so cool.
So the last time we saw each other in Kansas City was your going away party in a bar. And I brought my baby.
Which check.
I was like, oh, you brought a baby to a bar. She was very portable.
It felt so natural. When you see that kind of person, you're like, yeah, we're going to stay in contact.
Then we got to see each other this past summer when you were in Maine.
Yes.
And we met again in a bar, of course.
Full circle. And honestly, that was something I was like so many years had passed and we were so young when we met. I thought in my head, I was like, huh, like what if we're totally different people now? And I was like, oh no, she just kept getting cooler. And I will mention one other thing to the guests that I think what stuck in my brain, I was like, of course, you had a stand-up comedy night for your birthday. There's just those moments where I'm like, no, I've never seen anyone do that before. I've never experienced that much fun in a birthday. Like, how great is this? So I was like, yeah, I'll hit her up when we're in Maine. Bookmark for 11 years from now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Context. So that birthday party that you're talking about, that was my 30th birthday. I had never done stand-up comedy before, and I got it in my head. I want to host a amateur stand-up comedy night, very amateur, invited all my friends, rented out a room in a bar, and told my friends, we're going to do stand-up comedy. You have 2 months to prepare something. Don't leave me hanging. And I was the last one to go on stage, and 7 of my friends volunteered to go up there and just tell some damn jokes in a back room of a bar. And I was so impressed with my friends, not only that they showed up and did it, because none of us had told jokes on a stage before, not a single one of us. So not only did they agree to do it, but then they were fucking funny.
Really funny. So good. But what a wonderful way to celebrate life and your birthday. It was so good. No one's invited me to another birthday like that, but I'm waiting. It'll happen.
It was a really fun night. All right. Let's talk about fighting, man. Let's do it. Let's start by, I call it the State of the Union. My mister and I have been together for 23 years. We started dating in college when we were infant children. And we've been married for like almost 17 years. I don't know. Math is hard. But we've been together forever, for a million trillion years. And we have lived together for 17 years. Cohabitating with someone is a trip, you know? And like, he is the only partner that I've ever lived with. The only one. Before him, I was just like, listen, I need to be able to cut and run. If shit gets weird, I don't want to have to deal with moving out or like names on leases or shit. So he was the first one that I ever lived with. So we, in 23 years, have definitely grown up a lot and had to learn how to fight, how to have conflict, how to not murder each other. And it's evolved over time. What about you? You tell us about your State of the Union.
We've been married, matrimony, we'll just call it, for health insurance. We do love each other, but that's when you know you're in your late 30s and it's okay. I want to do freelance health insurance. America.
America.
Yeah. So we eloped, and prior to that, we were only together 2 years. So collectively, we've been together 5. So add a year in there somewhere. Actually, it was COVID, so of course I forgot it. We met.
But that fast forwards a relationship.
I was trying to like come up with a term. I was like, that was a pressure cooker that never exploded. Like it just was this constant state of like everything's falling apart. Yeah. So I think boot camp for relationships, yes. But previous to that, both of us were very much lone wolves. We both were very happy in our individual lives. We just doing our own thing and liked that. And so we dated a year-ish prior to COVID, and it was pretty tumultuous. We joke that if COVID hadn't happened, we actually wouldn't be together because it's like it locked us in your room. Like parents would be like, figure it out yourself. And we did. Spoiler alert.
Oh my gosh.
But so we lived by ourselves in COVID 6 months and then together like a year plus in really tight quarters. And we followed COVID rules and regulations very closely. So that meant not a ton of time with other people, but it was wild. I think everyone can relate to that in some capacity. We fought a lot, like a lot. But I think what I learned was that I think we were fighting for the future. It was like, if we get this out of our systems and we say these things and we don't hold back, like, we're going to be better together forever. So everything was on the table, everything, absolutely everything. And then we decided to move into a camper. So we went from 600 square feet to 100 feet-ish on wheels. Just because why not? You can survive COVID, you can do anything, folks. But we actually we fight less now. Isn't that ridiculous? Like, how do you fight less in less space? But that's where we're at. We have done the things together. We've lost family members. We've changed jobs. We've sold a house, sold things together. We've been on just like this sprint of 5 years that feels like 50, but all jam-packed. So looking back, I would not, I would like laugh. I'm like, don't try this at home. Like, don't, but I'm going to. So like I never lend relationship advice. I'm like, yeah, fight really hard in the beginning and then like get a smaller space and then like fight still and then like have the time of your life on top. Like, none of it makes sense. But I think that's, I don't know. Like, I'm just like, well, damn good time. All of the above. So that's where we're at. I hope that all makes sense, that timeline, because it still doesn't make sense to me. Questions in the comments section, I will not be able to answer.
It is a unique story.
It's no therapist would be like, yes, do this. And I was like, cool. Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Something that I love that you told me that you two do is you fight hard and fast.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Explain it.
We didn't really give it the hard and fast like title. We got that from our friends, the Obamas.
Oh.
Yeah, I think in Michelle's book, she mentioned my husband, partner, life mate, roommate, bunkmate. He called it that. And it's so true. Because I think when you're in such a small space, there's nowhere to hide. And your neighbors are close to you. You have to be pretty conscious. Definitely, I'm sure some neighbors have heard us argue. It's a camper. But we just got to like tackle it fast and part ways. And that's something we're still working on. But I think it works really well with us because we fought hard and long before. Now we have the tools and we understand how to get to the solutions faster. But it's working, and it's really working quite well. Our fights are less often and quick and sometimes most of the time laughable, usually within 48 hours. But yeah, I love that idea. It's what works for us. And I think it also is what works for us in this space.
Do you have any like ground rules, like explicitly or un?
I didn't mention this in our stories. Like, we have a ton in common. Like a ton, like we were raised in similar areas in Michigan. Our families are pretty similar in how they think and act to some degree. Like, we look at finances the same way. We look at politics the same way. We look at religion the same way. We look at the planet the same way. So it's like one of these things, like, we don't have these big things to fight over. And we don't fight over the small stuff. So usually it's this repetitive pattern of things that we're fighting over again. And we're still trying to figure out the solution. But yeah, I don't think there's like a formula. He is don't go to sleep angry people. And I'm a go to sleep angry person because I will always woke up with a clear mind. Honestly, if you even give me like 20 minutes of just like maybe punching a pillow, I'll feel good. Like, it's strange, but that's more from how my family fought. If I put up a little curtain in here and I feel the feels, I'll be good. So we're working on it. There's no magic formula, but it follows a pattern, and we're trying every single day to be better at fighting. I don't think there's anything wrong with fighting.
Yeah, I agree. So I think I used to be afraid of fighting. And that's like a family of origin thing because I grew up in a tumultuous, chaotic household. And angry people were unsafe people. And so I kind of wrap those together, that if you're fighting, you're angry, or if you're angry, you're fighting, and that feels unsafe. And so I would avoid that at most costs. And I was thinking about this. I used to avoid conflict. That being said, I am really good at having a hard conversation. And I think the difference for me on that is like a fight can like burst out of nowhere, but having a hard conversation, I am in more control. I come in with, this is what I want to say. This is what's bothering me. And that informs like how I fight too, because, okay, stick with me. Like you were saying about like go to bed angry, which
Yes.
Personally, I think bad advice is never go to bed angry. I say it's bad advice because that does not work for me. I do need the cooling down period. I need my brain to switch off of the lizard brain, right? I need it to switch off from the reactive part, and I need to take a step away and figure out what I really am feeling and add some like reason to my feelings. And that takes time and processing for me. And then I can come back to it and be like, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what I'm upset about, and this is what's not working for me. So that's why for me, never go to bed angry is bullshit. Because I had a boyfriend growing up who would keep me awake fighting. And like wouldn't let me go to sleep because we were fighting.
No.
And no, just all the way no. That was bad. Yeah.
It's like the worst version of a haunted house for me. Like, what? Oh, man. No. I mean, that is how my partner was in the beginning. And I would just be like, go to the couch, which is hilarious. That's very what we believe people have to do in a fight. Sleep on the couch. We now have twin beds. So that's how marriage lasts, folks. It's my tip. Yeah, I don't understand that advice, because I do think all people take time to process. And how we used to fight, he would come up with like the greatest solution the next morning. He did always have donuts in hand. So that works for me. Although now all I really donuts to is fighting. And I'm like, should I pick a fight? Should I like
I need donuts.
I just need donuts. I just need a sugar rush. But yeah, I think that is something I would tell anyone, find what works for you, but I haven't met a lot of people where it doesn't. You got to have space or a boundary or just a line you draw when you're not repeating that. Like, where you're pulling out things from like 7 weeks ago. This one time you grabbed that. And I'm like, once we get into that repetitive cycle, I just stop it. I'm just like, no, we're not, this is going nowhere. Like we have, or another thing we'll do in our fights is we'll say like, well, this one time, but we won't remember the time. We won't remember the thing. And so then we're like, well, I guess we'll just start journaling. We both do that to each other. Like, you made me mad on Tuesday because X, Y, and Z. No. So
Receipts.
Yes. Like, don't get into that. Like, pick your topic, stay on it. And if you can't resolve it, which normally you can't, go hang, whatever that means. Go on a walk, go climb a tree. I don't care. Just hang.
Yeah. Totally. Ben and I, we don't have a lot of ground rules in terms of fighting, but we don't call names or like just be mean. And what you were saying about, 7 weeks ago or 7 years ago or whatever, like that's kind of kitchen sinking to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, that has to stop. Like, we are talking about one thing right now. You can make an appointment with me to bitch about something from 7 weeks ago. Like, we're not doing that. And I have really worked with my kids about their fighting.
Yeah.
On that one.
Yep.
And so for them, another rule that I have that Ben and I didn't have to talk about is not using the always and never words. Like, oh, you always this, you never this. And my kids do that all the time. They always do that. JK. That's kind of like an identity thing. It's like, oh, now I'm fighting with who you are, not with what you did.
Yeah. And you're with that person. I think we have to remember, like, fighting is also an act of respect. That's something I've had to rewire in my brain. I'm not trying to bring him to my perspective. like for him to think the same way, but I want him to understand like where I'm coming from. It's always like, just take a seat on my bench. Like, that's it. I want you to see what I see, but I don't need you to feel how I feel. That's okay. I think back to like how we fight differently, but like the family of origin, like my family fought hard, long, all the kitchen sinks, all the sinks. His was like, we don't fight. So like he often feels anytime I bring anything up, even if it's one of those hard conversations, it's a personal attack. And I'm like, oh gosh, I wouldn't be with you if I didn't respect the shit out of you. Trust me. I could have been alone forever and happy, but this is a little more fun.
You mentioned that you and your mister are really similar. You have a lot in common. And Ben and I have a lot in common too. Like, again, worldviews are very similar, and what's important to us, and a lot of the really foundational baseline stuff we have in common or similar views on. And we have absolute respect for the other person's view on it. But it's fairly easy when you have similar views, right? We don't tend to fight about big things that can be really hard, like who are you voting for in the political for the presidential, yikes. I can't imagine how hard that would be if we didn't agree on stuff like that. And for the most part, Ben and I agree on how to raise children, but not entirely, Foundational stuff, yeah, but like little by little, there's always going to be places where you don't agree. And so something that Ben and I have been doing more recently, like in the last year or so, because I did start bringing up some choices that we had made. Ben sometimes has wild ideas. And before we had kids, wild ideas I was always on board for. Yes, let's go to Colorado tomorrow. Let's rent jet skis. Like, whatever. It's so much easier to do when you don't have the commitment of children and the responsibility of children. And so I used to go along to get along all the time. And then there were two things that I said yes to in the last 10 years that I ended up being like, that was a bad fucking idea.
Ooh.
And one of them was getting a boat.
Sorry, I should be laughing this hard. Because I imagine on the jet ski, I was very much in a Mariah Carey music video. And now I'm in a Jay-Z music video. Yes. So let's go. Thank you for this mindset. But that's hilarious. A boat. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Like the boat was fine for a while and then it just wasn't. And so that was one where it was like, oh no, Ben's crazy idea didn't work out for Sal. And another one was we were invited to 2 weddings. They happened within 48 hours of each other and they were 7 states away. And Ben wanted to go to both. And I said, no, thank you. And one of them was my sister and I was in the wedding. And I was like, no. And he was like, we can do it. And I was like, but I don't want to. And he was like, but we can do it. And it's important to me. And I said, okay. And then when one of my children shit their pants at the airport, I was like, this was a bad idea.
Proof in the pudding, literally. Sorry, I love that.
There were these ideas that I had said yes to and against maybe my better judgment. And we did them. And then there was resentment because I sat on it. I sat on how I felt. And that has always been like the death, to not speak up and say, I didn't like this, or I don't want to do this, or this sucks, or whatever. And truly, we've been together for so long, and we didn't used to fight. Really, we didn't used to fight. And I was like, neat. But the thing was, I wasn't speaking up enough. And so instead, I made a pile of resentment. And then you kind of hate the way they chew everything. You know what I mean? Whoa. Like, if you let all of that resentment build up, then you just hate everything about them.
Yep.
And you don't even know why. And you're like, but I think you're the worst. And then you're just like, there's not even anything to fight about. And so we got there. We have been there before, with me agreeing to do something and then being like, I fucking hated that, but feeling like we both agreed to it, and then feeling like, well, I can't say anything, it's over. And then the pile of resentment. So we have had to fight our way through all of those past fights. Like, years later, I told him how I felt about the boat and about how sailing may have been the most relaxing thing on earth for him, but it sure as shit wasn't for me, because we had 2 tiny children.
Whoa.
And I was parenting the whole time.
No.
And it was awful. And we had to like post-date fight about that. And that 2 weddings in 48 hours, we had to fight too late about that. I have gotten better at speaking up when I figure out, oh, I don't like this. I have gotten so much better at believing myself, because I used to just push away my feelings like they weren't valid. I was like, no, Ben makes sense. Ben's a smart guy. And I would invalidate my own feelings, but they were still there. And then the resentment builds, and then I hate my partner. So I am getting much better at speaking in the moment, and like, it's almost like micro fights instead of letting it be a big blowout. Yes. But okay, this is the thing that we started doing about a year ago that really helps. When we come together and it's like, say it's, hey, do we want to go to this festival this weekend? It's 4 hours away and we'd have to get a hotel. Just, that's an example. And we both have different feelings about it, but we're not sure, like, I kind of want to go, but I kind of don't want to go. And he does, and we give it priority. We rate it. And so it's like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how intensely do you want to do this?
Yeah.
And if I'm coming in at a 4 that I don't want to, and he's coming in at a 3 that he does, we pick the 4 and we don't do it.
Yeah.
And that priority rating has really helped us in terms of like, how important is this to you? We're a couple of nerds, and like, having that rating system has really helped us not fight about certain things. And it forced me to think, how important is this to me? When sometimes feelings are so mushy, you like have so many different feelings. I feel this and I feel that, and what do I really want?
We do a lot of the exit interview. I used to call them like Yelp reviews. He'll go, I didn't like that restaurant, or I didn't like that thing we did. Like right after the fact, where he's, I love it, I love it, I love it. And I'm like, can we just sit with it for a second? But I think flipping that and starting to say, what do I want to get out of this? That mindset, and that, yeah, the rating system works for you guys. But we don't walk through the scenario of like, why do we want to do this? What does it look like? How do we prepare? We just go, and then all of a sudden we're like in it. And it happened to us over a pony ride last weekend. It was like my thing. Yeah, because that's what I do. I ride ponies. Just kidding. Hadn't done it in 6 years. But it was like the thing that was so important to me. And he had done a gravel ride the day before. Just crazy 50-mile bike ride. Insane elevation gains. Just different type of fun. But in my head, I was like, I'm supporting you in this. You need to support me in my pony ride. But like, none of that was really communicated. And he was like late to get out the door. We felt rushed leading up to the pony ride. He wanted to ride while I was on the ride. Like, it's just this. And the whole day was like, and we fought in public. Don't you love when you see that too?
Oh, God.
It was a silent kind of fighting, but people could tell. And I just, sometimes you also have this very sitcom moment where you're like, all the ladies in this room are going to stand up and clap when they hear me say this thing that like we all experience. It's not about you. But it's because we don't do the opposite. I mean, in some way we need to find some like informational interview. There we go. If we do exit interviews, why aren't we doing informational interviews? What do you want out of this? What is so exciting about this? Is there anything else coming up that could be comparable? Like, we're pretty good about if it's expensive or it costs too much. Like, we're very good at that. But when it's just emotions on the table, we don't talk about that till usually they're negative.
Yeah. It's less concrete emotions.
Yeah. Well, I might not be able to articulate why I want to ride a pony.
Yeah, that's so true.
The 12-year-old in me walks ride the pony.
Yes.
And I'm just like, I get it's not exactly something I should be doing today, but I don't care.
Yeah, it's hard to articulate your feelings, and if we're not even giving ourselves the time to figure out how we feel, which is so often the fact, we're just moving. We're a bunch of sharks just moving, just keep swimming. And if we don't stop to think about how we feel about something, there's no way we're going to be able to articulate how we feel about something. And then you're just doing it, you're in it, and you're like, yeah, I fucking knew this was going to be a bad idea. Did you know? Then why didn't you say something? It's
Yeah.
like, I kind of didn't know. I wasn't sure.
And I think that's okay too, to be like, okay, let's just not repeat this. Okay,
Yeah.
learn from this. I'm always down. I'm like, I don't care how messy it gets. If I can learn from it, that's okay too. But I think going back to what you said is not making it about them as a person. If you really didn't know that, like, how much this pony ride meant to me, I love that this is a recent example. I sound like just every little girl. Yeah, like how much that meant to me. If I wasn't able to articulate it, how could he understand? So, like,
Yeah.
of course, it unfolded in a weird way, and he was exhausted, so he was also not in tune with his own feelings and his own mental capacity for a day of getting me to a pony. But yeah, I think fights are gonna happen. I like laugh because we actually sit down and stare at each other and talk about everything to like the deep, deep depths of possible conversations, because it's just us. For 2 years, it's really been just us. We're not around family, we're not around friends. So we avoid a lot of those conversations, but I think we kind of sometimes we just avoid a conversation because we're tired of talking to the other person. So it ends up a fight because it's I don't want to bring this up because like I have to spend the next 12 hours staring at you. So yeah, it's tough, but I think we're getting better at figuring out what the person's triggers are. Like for me, it's like being late. If we're going to be late, like I'll be in a bad mood all day. Like I can't get out of that. That is very much how I grew up. So like if he understands, hey, I need to prepare a bit more so we're not late, that's just going to be a trigger for me forever. It just is.
Yeah.
And I think for like us, it's okay. I always ask Mike, you knew this was a trigger for me, right? This is a big topic. I'm not being a jerk. This is not small. This is one of the biggest things I will deal with for my entire life. I could tell you exactly where it came from. I went to enough therapy to understand the inception point. I could point it out on Google Maps. Time, date, stamp. I'm like, this is real. Like, I promise you. It's just, and I know there's times you can't avoid it, but like, if you could, I promise you, I will respect you so much, and I can be a better partner too if we try to avoid the things that get me going no matter what.
Yeah. Okay, something we haven't talked about is time alone and time apart, because that's important. You and I both know it. You're in a unique situation because you share 100 square feet, and so you are on top of each other. And you both work in that space. You live in that space. So talk about that. Like, how do you know when you need space? How do you take space? How do you do it? Does it hurt each other's feelings? I'm sure you've got this figured out.
We really do. That is like the one thing I can't wait for in our next life too. Is like we call them separate Saturdays. So it's just pretty much known that like we will spend Saturdays separately. I just believe in life, especially in this world. If you don't schedule it, it won't happen. Like, absolutely. And it's okay if it gets canceled. That's one of those like moments where you're like, oh, this is an obvious disappointment. Go ahead, honey, have the bottle of wine. You can be sad if it doesn't happen, but knowing it's a possibility gives you a chance to plan, which would have been better if that was a Sunday that my pony ride. So I really messed things up. But yeah, separate Saturdays. And we only have one vehicle, so there's a little bit of complexity there. But it always is this mindset shift, even if he's just outside and I'm reading inside or vice versa. It's really cool. We just have this, like, we love our Saturdays for ourselves. And we also, in the evenings, watch our own things, read our own things separately. Like, we do create a divide to some capacity day to day too. And then I joked before we were hopping on, I was like, these little things. I'm pointing to my iPods. Boom. That has saved. We did not have those in COVID. We were working right next to each other, talking.
Oh.
And he was like very much like a in between calls, in between emails, talk to you person. I need dead silence to work. It's some form of like, I can't. But we've worked through those fights, you know.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is if I went back and looked at some of the biggest fights in our relationship, there's a lot of success stories. And that's never something we sit back and think about. Like, let's recap our top 10 fights and what came out of them. Come to find out, because we seriously, again, don't talk to anyone else. We do go through those. And I would recommend that too. So there's my 2 pieces of advice. Schedule your time apart. And when you are together, celebrate even the hard times that got you to the good things. That's huge. Aww. What about you?
Well, I agree with the separate time thing. Mm-hmm. And so we do a different version. We have our nights off. And I stole this from a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Who also has a partner and children. So every week I have one night off and Ben has one night off. And so last night was Ben's night off and he did not have to join us for dinner. He sure as shit didn't have to cook dinner. He didn't have to put the kids to bed. And what he chose to do with his night off, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Mm. And so he went and played pickleball, and then I think he played electronic music. And so that's how he chose to spend his night off. My night off is tonight. I am going to go for a walk with a girlfriend and then make mocktails. Mm. And we're going to enjoy them on my porch swing. And I will probably stay up late journaling and listening to music.
Yes.
So I cherish this time. Mm-hmm. We have a different family dynamic than you do. It is such a delight to get a break from parenting. Yeah. And we don't have a family that live in Maine that can babysit. Like that sort of thing has not been true for us the whole time we've been here. And so getting a break from parenting hasn't always been easy. So cherish our nights off. And that means I get a break from the kids. It means I get a break from Ben. But it isn't just the nights off, though. It's like Ben went out of town in July for a few days. And I was so glad he was gone.
Oh, and yes.
I love this guy, but it was such a delight for him to not be here and for me to actually miss him and for him to come back and for me to be glad that he was back. Because also, Ben and I both work from home. Mm-hmm. Ben and I don't leave the house to do work. So we are always here. Mm-hmm. And similar to how you were in COVID, like we're just always here. Ben and I used to share the same office space.
No,
that didn't last that long. Because we office different. And just like conference calls was just, no, absolutely not. But being together all the time is not good for you. You need to miss each other. And you also need to like have your own hobbies. I'm a more interesting person when I'm doing other things.
Yes.
I'm like, don't involve him. And I love hanging out with him. He's actually my favorite person to hang out with. 100% favorite person. Also, I just need him to go away sometimes.
And I think what is also beautiful in that, I can almost place bets you do the same, is you're also curious. Like, it makes him a unique, if they leave and go experience something different, like I'm excited for them. And then I'm just like curious, what did they see? How did they, what cow did they talk to in Vermont? And it's not like I need like a detailed report of how did you spend your time. It's still like,
I want a detailed report. I love it.
I love how my partner sees the world. And for me, that is so fun that I'm just like, tell me what's up. What's going on here? Like, how'd you do? Where'd you go? What thing? And it's just more fun. It makes both of us more curious about the other person. And it's hilarious because we'll still end up texting each other while we're away. And we're like, except for Saturday, like we got, you don't need to have that boundary, but I think sometimes it's just funny. We're like, oh, you're still the only person I'm texting and showing this day to. Cool. Wish you were here, but you're not because I didn't let you. But you got it. Yeah. I'm glad you guys schedule it too. And I remember you telling me about that when you were in person. I was like, that's brilliant. Yes, got to do it.
Something I wanted to ask, what do you fight about? What are your biggest fights about? What are your reoccurring fights?
It's going to shock the audience, most people on the planet. Money. It's very strange. We're both savers. We're both frugal. So it's not so much how the person spends money, but it's like the mindset. I've never had that security of money where he has. So it's just a feeling about money, even though we spend it the same way. So, and that I remember reading day one, like the number one cause for divorce in America is money. And I was like, we are going to, no matter what, be as transparent as possible. But there's big things that come up that you've never approached before. He gets a bonus once a quarter. And there was just one month he was not going to get it because it was like, they like make it up at the end of the year. But he just said out of nowhere, I'm not getting a bonus. And like, that means a lot as someone who's like, whoa, what do you mean the money you expected didn't come? But so that was one of those big fights where it was like, he just said it so casually. And to me, I'm like, what? So money's a big one because it's more like things we just haven't approached yet. I don't know how many people have to take their camper and skip the tires. We just haven't had that. That there's just things that haven't come up yet, and we both approach it a little bit like he knows the money will come, whereas I'm very much in like a scarcity mode. I'm like, you got to plan for that. Maybe sometimes you can't always plan for that. We got to have a savings. Then you need to have a backup savings for your savings. So there's just that we think the same way, again, how we spend it, but not so much like how we learn and this really blew his mind when I was like, what's your relationship like with your money? He was like, what? So anyway, so money, when things you can't predict, like how your day unfolds. Like when one of us has a bad day in a small space, it takes over. So that's tough. That's really tough. So I think like schedule mishaps, money, and family. Yeah. You can't, like it's similar to a bad day. It just creeps its way in and you're like, I didn't know I was sitting with this feeling or this old conversation. So those are definitely the top 3 topics. But each time, like I said, it's like we're getting better at fighting. I don't think the fighting's become less, but it's it's just healthier. We weren't taught how to fight. Yeah. We weren't. No one is anyone.
Is. Right. Exactly.
But I think those topics will come up, and I don't want to say we're never going to not fight over those things, but I think they're pretty similar in a lot of relationships, money, family, and then the unpredictable. But it's like the situation at the sink, but that's usually a quick snip, not a fight. It's like a zinger. And then we realize that person voicing their opinion quickly and we just move on. And that's okay too. It doesn't have to be a fight. If they have an opinion about the sink, let them have it. Yeah. What about you?
Frankly, truly, chores. Chores. The first big fight we ever got in was about chores. And to this day, it is still the thing that we fight the most about. We had to do some really resetting around here because as a woman and as a mother, I do a lot of unpaid, invisible labor. I do a lot of emotional labor, and men don't tend to see it. It's called invisible for a reason. And so much of it is around the brain space that it takes to make a life livable. So I have a good example, which is Christmas. So Christmas isn't just buying gifts. Christmas is thinking about who you're buying gifts for, thinking about what they like, buying those gifts, wrapping those gifts, and then giving those gifts. That's just gift giving. Mm-hmm. And so much of gift giving is up in your head, more so than going to a store or logging onto a website. And so that's a really tangible example of that invisible labor of not just Christmas, but like birthdays. Oh, your mom's birthday is coming up. And then you say, what would your mom like? And just like all that shit that women tend to do around the caregiving and the love that we show to people in our lives. And I am really anti-traditionalist in this. I don't care for these gender norms that we are all still swallowing and taking and doing and following. So we have fought over all of that. And I've been very angry about it.
Yeah.
We've both read books about it. I read the book Fair Play, which has a lot to do with that distribution of domestic labor. And he read a different book about the same goddamn idea.
And to be clear, I'm not stuck in some trad wife hellscape with a husband that wants me barefoot and pregnant. I'm just talking about the same shit that every other woman in a heteronormative relationship is talking about. It's these unspoken patterns that we're still falling into around gender roles in home, particularly when it comes to raising children and caregiving. The women were doing the lion's share of the mental work, the management, planning, anticipating of the things that need to get done. And in Fair Play, they break every task down into 3 parts. It's the conception, planning, and execution. Women are typically doing the conception, the thinking, and the planning. We're doing it off camera. And the men aren't even aware until they've been asked to help with the execution. At which point, we've already done more than half the work. You know, it's like feeding people isn't just making dinner. It's meal planning and then grocery shopping and cooking. And I'm doing all of that in our house. So Ben does all of the dishes. I don't even touch the dishes. That's his. I'm in charge of all aspects of medical care for our kids. So making the doctor's appointments, going to the doctors. And he's in charge of all sports-related extracurricular activities. So we've agreed to which tasks we each own, and then we just own them entirely. And it's really helped a lot. And there's always room for improvement.
So that has been our biggest argument over time. But we also argue about money. And,
Right.
oh man, money. That is a whole other topic, right? Because we all come into it with our own baggage. We saw how our parents handled money or didn't, and learned lessons from that, and decided how we wanted to go forth and conquer. And we all have our shit about money, and I hold on to money, and Ben thinks money is unlimited. And so I have to rein him in. So there's a lot of give and take there. And he's like talking me off a ledge a lot of times with money. And it's just like our roles that we play. So those are our 2 biggest like fighty things, I guess, is chores and money. But the key to our fighting is that we respect each other. We don't call names. We don't pull punches. And we've just learned as we go. Like, communication is the most important part. And even when I don't understand myself, I'm just like, hey, I need a break. I ask for breaks all the time. And I'm processing something, or I'm trying to figure out how the hell I feel, or what's going on with me, or whatever. And it helps me be a better partner by taking those breaks. So that's where we're coming from.
I can relate to every piece of that because we have less. There is less to fight over. That helps a lot. But it's still that I'm with you, like that. Like, he runs out of oats, and I'm like, you don't look and know you're once a week to the grocery store, because grocery stores were usually in small towns. Come to find out, they're not in every town. You know, a lot more planning ahead, and I do the planning. So there is absolutely labor that still happens and lands on the one. Because he'll be like, I make dinners, and I'm like, if we break down the hour and a half it takes me plus the half hour to, well, I've really broken it down from, and I think that helps to prevent various other fights. But yeah, I think there's still we will, especially this generation and beyond, we will fight over gender norms. But I'm glad, I'm actually like really happy to have this space to fight over them, and feel so comfortable in my relationship to go, that is not okay. Even if that's what you saw, from your family. That's not okay. That's not how we're doing this. I also am pretty transparent with him as someone who's on the verge of like perimenopause, all that. I am so transparent. So then it's really funny if we get in a fight. I'm like, but I tell you everything. I told you, like, this is this day in my cycle. I will be batshit crazy. How do you want me to put it on your calendar? Invite? What do you want? So like sometimes that happens, and then I'm like, dude, this is hard for me to even understand why am I excited. But it's like I need to lower. I will absolutely say out loud, I need to lower my expectations because I'm still learning too. All those gender norms and physically how we're different. So yeah, there was a lot I could relate to there. But yeah, hey, isn't that the great thing about fighting? Can also open a massive window into you. And I love that. I'm like, ooh, tell me more, self. Why did that get you going?
What a good point that fighting is a window into ourselves, because we're not going to fight about something that we're not juiced about. Like, why are we juiced about it? What is it? Where is this coming from?
Yeah. As someone who generally feels good about a lot of things, I'm like, it's usually the deep-seated stuff. And no matter how much work I've done on myself, like, we're growing. Like, 28 versus 38 is such a different life cycle and what's happening around us. And wow, yeah, you bring all that home with you too.
We are almost out of time, but I do want to ask, in case there's some like juicy tidbits here, is there any like best advice that you've ever received, or any like worst advice you've ever received about like relationships and fighting?
I think it's funny. Together we had, because I think we talked a lot in the partnership realm, and again, another conversation for a different day. And I bring this into my relationships is like friendship fights. Like those are still some of the hardest. Like, you can't be as vulnerable. So like my best advice always was imagine the other side. And it's not I'll share this. It's from a lovely woman named Rachel Cargill. And she talks about fantasizing the other side. Maybe it's when you're in something difficult, maybe when it's in a fight, take that moment to think of like the calmness you feel afterwards. And she articulates it in such a beautiful way. But you also have to meet yourself there if you want to get through this for a good reason. That's what kind of goes back to like fighting for the future. It's usually the calm after the storm that if you realize what it'll feel like, it'll make being in that really tough situation or fight or argument all worth it.
That's nice. Yeah. I liked what you said about how you don't need him to agree with you, but you just want him to like sit on the bench with you.
Yeah.
Just like see your perspective. Something Ben keeps saying to me when I get mad at him about something, he keeps saying to me, and I keep working on it, I wish you could just try to remember I'm on your side. And that's the thing that we try to come back to is we're on each other's side. And when we've had some really big arguments, it's like, I want us to fight together.
Fighting for the future. It's not for that moment. It's like for that long-term result and bond. Yeah. No one will know you like your partner. No one. Not even you, quite possibly.
Right. I totally think that. I know Ben understands parts of me better than I understand parts of me. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspective about fighting, particularly with your unique situation of being in such a small space together all the time. I think it's amazing and impressive. And it is like you have fast forwarded your entire relationship.
Yeah. So often we'll meet these retired folks that are like, I could never be around my partner in that small space. And that makes me like really sad. I'm like, no, we like really like each other. And I get you. No, maybe not 24/7, 365, 2 years in a row. Like, no, I get that. That's extreme. A lot of what I do is extreme. But I love that we can sit in silence together. That's a gift. Yeah. To be around someone and be like, I don't have to do anything, including fight.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I want too, is you don't have to be someone else. You don't have to be your fucking self. You don't have to be anything. You can just literally be with that person and you're good. It's okay. This is great. Yes, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Miranda, thank you so much for sharing with me, and thanks for telling me all your deepest, darkest secrets. I'm going to finish this up with our joy share. So I am going to share with you one thing that I saw recently that brought me immense amounts of joy. So here's the thing. This sounds like a lie, okay? This doesn't sound true, but this definitely happened last week. I saw a nun riding a motorcycle.
Only in Maine.
It was amazing. She was wearing the whole outfit, dude. Like the habit, if that's what it's called, the thing on the head, the habit was flowing behind her on her motorcycle.
Yes.
Just her and the wind and God. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
No helmet?
No helmet. She was just like, hey,
Let's
God's
go.
hands.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I can.
No helmet.
I have nothing. That brings me joy. Wow. I can see it. I can feel it. Oh man. That's good.
Okay. So I know you can't top my nun on a motorcycle, but I would like for you to share one thing that has brought you joy recently.
Like it's a broader topic, not a moment, but I'm very into reinvention stories right now. Like just teachers that become real estate agents or artists to become nurses. Like just, I love that. And it probably has to do with this life. Like I see a lot of people. Someone asked me recently, what about Vermont sticks out to you and the other states that you've liked or cities? And I'm always like, it's really joyful elders. Like just older individuals doing their damn thing and not apologetic, like very open, willing, kind. It's just, sometimes I feel like but in the United States, we kind of like lock up our old people. Whereas like, if I see an elder just like enjoying a walk or a hike or a bike or doing anything outside. I saw this woman, that's what it was, like while I was on my pony, just painting in a yard next to an 1800 schoolhouse. And I was just like, is this real? Are these all paid actors? It has to be. This is the Truman Show Vermont edition. Yeah. So it's people just doing things a little bit different and having really cool hobbies on display.
Cool. I love that.
And Allie, your nun had her hobby on display, girl.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, that's good.
I obviously wish I had a picture to prove it, but it was so fast. It was just like that. And I definitely did a double take and was like, yeah, I really did see a nun jamming on a motorcycle.
Were you alone?
Ben was there, but he was driving. He didn't see it.
Oh, that's real.
I know.
Dang it. That's awesome.
Thank you again, Miranda, for joining me. Thanks for being on the podcast. I hope that listeners have enjoyed this conversation. Maybe some of this has resonated with you. If you have picked up a helpful tip, that would be so cool. If something that we said could help you in your relationships or your conflicts, because that's why I talk with my girlfriends. That's why I started this podcast, is that I love these conversations where we just share what's really going on in our lives, like warts and all, and don't feel so alone and feel more understood, and also just pick up some helpful advice along the way to help us through this hard damn life that we're living, because this ain't easy. There is no rule book. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please share with friends, tell a friend, subscribe, listen to other episodes. And I super appreciate you being here. And this was Chin Hairs and F-Bombs, Conversations with Girlfriends.